As the months go by and plenty of hotfixes continue to roll out across many of the classes, some new builds and specs have risen to the top and are looking pretty strong right now. Warriors are dealing incredible damage with Execute as an alternative to their Colossus build. Fire Mages are now obliterating targets during their cooldowns with Meteor, and Ret Paladins are pumping out absurd self-healing, making them much harder to take down than they used to. These builds and other specs are going to be discussed as we break down the best new meta builds for this season. A class that's seen quite a lot of changes overall, with different specs varying in strength obviously, is none other than Mage. The most recent changes include buffs to Fire Mage, which honestly, to us didn't really seem too impressive on paper, but in reality, however, the Meteor buff was a powerful change that significantly increased their burst pressure. During cooldowns, Fire Mages can deal incredible damage that can catch really any player by surprise. And the biggest issue with Fire Mage, though, still remains its passive damage outside of offensive cooldowns. As long as you can survive their big cooldowns, it often feels like you could ignore the rest of their damage altogether, as they aren't really much of a threat unless they can spam polymorphs on your healer, right? But honestly, if you think that's weak, almost nothing compares to how weak Arcane Mage still is. Even with damage buffs, the fundamental design of Arcane is honestly just too punishing to play in today's arena matches. It's just different nowadays. They only have one meaningful school of magic, which makes it difficult to play the game when locked out of Arcane, as they can't cast any other impactful spells. Now, the other main issue is that Arcane Surge has a cast time before it activates. This means that if you use interrupts, crowd control, or line of sight the cast, you can deny it entirely and delay their primary win condition. And by delaying it, you often have enough time to recover your major defensive cooldowns, which is usually going to be enough to survive the pressure. Arcane, in our opinion, is one of the weakest casters and is definitely the weakest mage spec by far. Now, luckily for mage players though, Frost Mage does sit on the opposite side of the spectrum. It's top tier, and it's arguably the best range spec in the whole game. Their passive damage is strong, and their burst with Ray of Frost can create an unbelievable amount of pressure that we've all dealt with. Having access to 2 ice blocks on a relatively low cooldown also makes them incredibly difficult to kill too. There's a reason why the AWC was filled with Frost Mages, because they're an absolute powerhouse in any arena game nowadays. If you focus them, they can kite most melee and are notoriously difficult to kill. And look, if you make the mistake of leaving them alone in the right hands, they can cause havoc, dealing massive damage and landing game-winning crowd control to help their team secure the victory. So, if you want to play the best of the best right now, Frost is the clear and present choice. Fire is also strong and a number 2, so you could play that if you prefer its playstyle, which relies heavily on offensive cooldowns but deals very little passive damage, so you have to think about that. Now, Arcane, on the other hand, it simply is just a whole lot weaker than the other two in our opinion, but if you manage to make it work, you're definitely going to earn some bonus respect points from us here at Skillcapped. Now, even if you already knew that Frost Mage is the best, you still got to be able to perform on Frost Mage. Getting your Ray of Frost interrupted, failing to ice block in time, or missing important counterspells can all be part of what's going wrong, and you might not even know it. That's why we invented the Arena Coach, so you can see exactly where you went wrong in your matches. Being able to record and see any big errors in your gameplay is going to help you massively fix them so you can become a master of the arena. So check it out using the link below and make sure to try out Arena Coach if you want to take your gameplay to the next level. Now, we can't talk about mages though without mentioning rogues, as these two classes, they often go hand in hand. So which rogue spec is looking the strongest right now, you might be asking? Well, right now there are 2 clear contenders, as both Subtlety and Assassination feel incredibly powerful and are easily S-tier melee specs. Subtlety Rogue does have a low cooldown on Shadow Dance, and with the shorter DR timers now, this does feel especially favorable for the spec. Being able to create frequent offensive setups with its stun windows is exactly why Subtlety remains such a top melee spec. Now, while it can create opportunities with its cooldowns, it can also be a fairly telegraphed spec to the trained eye. Outside of Shadow Dance and secret technique windows, its pressure really drops off significantly. So, if you can survive their goes by peeling effectively, then Subtlety Rogue doesn't feel nearly as threatening all the time. This is where Assassination comes in, offering much stronger sustain damage that can overwhelm teams at the right moment. It has undeniably strong damage, and Garrote Silence can be a nightmare for casters and healers. Its Deathmark and Kingsbane windows can create immense burst damage and give it plenty of opportunities to secure kills. The Smoke Bomb windows as Assassination are also massive win conditions, as they can solo targets in this area as long as the enemy has no defensives up. However, similar to Subtlety Rogue, if you on the opposing team could effectively deal with Kingsbane and Deathmark, you're usually going to survive against an Assassination Rogue. It also has fewer stuns, which means less control over the game and makes it harder to secure kills or peel for teammates. That leaves us with Outlaw Rogue, which is still a good spec, just not quite as potent as Subtlety or Assa. It still does have decent offensive setups, but it has less CC than the likes of Sub. While its passive damage is also good though, it just feels like it's falling behind on Assa, considering that Assa can also silence targets with their improved Garrote, but Outlaw still does provide good damage when it can connect to any target. So, moving on to another popular spec, we have Retribution Paladins, which recently received a hero talent overhaul that caused most players to completely swap from Templar to Herald. Now, unfortunately for Templar enjoyers, the latest fixes to Retribution Paladin hit this hero talent tree and they hit it hard. Templar was known for its massive burst damage and relatively weak sustained pressure. Now that its burst damage has been nerfed though, the hero talent tree feels, let's just say it's lackluster right now. However, Herald did receive several buffs to it, making it the new go-to choice for Retribution Paladins. It's dealing more damage than most players initially expected it to, providing stronger sustained pressure while still maintaining respectable burst damage during wings. One talent that is significantly stronger for Herald than Templar though is Healing Hands. This talent greatly increases their instant self-healing. Now in PvP, Word of Glory is heavily nerfed, but that doesn't seem to apply in the same way to Eternal Flame, which can heal the Retribution Paladin for a substantial amount. This makes them a whole lot more durable, allowing them to heal themselves reliably unless dampening becomes extremely high. It may be a bug that gets fixed in the future, but for now, it's another major reason why Herald is outperforming Templar for Retribution Paladins. Now, a class that's been through the ups and downs, and let's just be honest, through the ringer the entire season is none other than Warriors. The most recent changes included a slight nerf to Arms Warriors' overall damage, but buffs to Slayer, Overpower, and Execute have made Slayer a much more competitive option. In fact, the same is true for Fury Warriors, as they receive similar buffs, making Slayer a strong choice for single-target damage. The addition of stronger sudden death procs, combined with an Execute that now actually hits hard, gives this build excellent single-target damage. Vicious Agility is also an underrated talent that can drastically improve your ability to stick to targets if your goal is to tunnel down a caster. However, despite all of these changes, Colossus does remain the go-to pick in most matchups, especially in cleave situations. It just deals more damage in two-target and multi-target scenarios, and its demolish windows can be devastating when set up properly and a good player's controlling, as long as the enemy team can be locked down in the process. Now, another underrated factor that helps Colossus significantly though is its hero talent, Mountain of Muscle and Scars. The 5% damage reduction is valuable enough to be a necessity against compositions that are likely to tunnel you and could otherwise be difficult to survive without it. Now, what seems like a minor talent there can actually be one of the biggest reasons to stick with Colossus, providing that extra layer of durability that's needed to withstand the enemy pressure. And now, while Fury Warrior isn't as strong as Arms right now, it also does have two hero talent options to play. Mountain Thane is the primary choice here, providing much stronger cleave pressure that can overwhelm melee cleaves or any composition where you can consistently pressure two or more targets. This is thanks to Thunderclap and Thunderblast being tied into Whirlwind. Similar to Colossus, there's an underrated hero talent right now that makes Mountain Thane even more appealing. Keep Your Feet on the Ground. This talent gives you a flat 2% physical damage reduction, making it excellent against warriors, against windwalkers, and really any other spec that deals heavy physical damage. It also grants 8% damage reduction for 5 seconds every time you use Thunderblast, which happens, well, pretty frequently. This extra durability is exactly what Fury needed to survive against high sustained pressure. Now, Slayer is pretty much the same for Fury as it is for Arms. You gain more sudden death procs, which means more executes to finish off your enemies. Not only is it stronger for single target pressure, but for Fury specifically, it also helps generate more rage, making it easier to build and maintain your Slaughterhouse stacks. And building Slaughterhouse stacks is one of the key mechanics every Fury Warrior needs to master in Arena. And you would have already known that, along with many other advanced strategies if you were subscribed to Skill Cap. Our Fury Warrior guide covers this and many other game-changing tips in its advanced course, showing you exactly how to play the spec at a high level. Now, there's also advanced courses for a wide variety of other classes too, covering the strongest specs and helping you gain an edge in every arena match. Another spec that has seen many changes to its hero talents is Enhancement Shaman. Throughout this expansion, both of the hero talents have risen and fallen in strength due to nerfs and buffs. Right now, however, both feel quite strong depending on what you're facing and even which bracket that you're playing. Stormbringer revolves around Ascendance, creating huge win conditions every 2 minutes. In Solo Shuffle, by the time you reach your second Ascendance, the enemy team has often already used most of their defensive cooldowns, making it a whole lot easier to secure a win. In fact, a huge percentage of Enhancement Shaman wins in this bracket come from their second Ascendance, proving just how important it is as a win condition. The main issue, though, is that if the enemy team has immunities or strong peeling cooldowns available for your Ascendance, it can become really difficult to win against certain compositions. And this is where Totemic comes into play, as Totemic uses a different talent setup that includes Doom wins instead of Ascendance. Now, essentially, instead of having one extremely powerful offensive cooldown every 2 minutes, you gain a moderately powerful cooldown every minute. And this is particularly effective in 3v3, where coordinated offensive setups are much more common. Being able to create kill opportunities more frequently does make it harder for the enemy team to consistently have an answer. You can still choose whichever hero talent you prefer, as both are pretty viable right now. However, Totemic is generally the option that most rank 1 Enhancement Shamans are choosing to adopt right now. And speaking of hybrid specs, Herald Druid has also received a few recent changes. That's right, Herald Druids received several buffs recently, including an overall damage increase and additional buffs to Druid of the Claw. However, though, these changes weren't enough to justify swapping hero talents, as Druid of the Claw still feels too lackluster, and Wildstalker continues to outperform it in virtually every situation. Now, that said, the 4% overall damage increase has made Herald Druid even stronger, cementing it as a powerful melee spec that can perform well really in any bracket right now. Their gameplay remains largely unchanged through these changes, as they continue to be the Swiss Army knife of melee specs. They can control the game with cyclones, they can crush enemies during offensive cooldowns, or become masters of kiting when they're being targeted. In the right hands, Herald Druids can be an absolute nightmare to deal with. However, they are quite vulnerable to stuns outside of bear form, which can make them surprisingly fragile when caught off guard. Now, last but not least, some of the biggest changes from the most recent round of fixes were made to Preservation Evokers. They received multiple nerfs to their primary healing abilities, bringing them back down after significantly outperforming every other healer. While they aren't quite as overpowered as they once were, they're still arguably stronger than other healers overall. Their healing output does remain excellent, and access to spammable sleepwalks can make them incredibly frustrating to play against really in any bracket right now. While Preservation Evokers may still be the top healer in Solo Shuffle though, they're challenged by Voidweaver Discipline Priest in 2v2, where that specialization can be exceptionally powerful right now. The slower pace gives them more opportunities to contribute more meaningful damage, making them far more potent in this bracket than in others. Now, as for 3v3, Restoration Druids can sometimes outperform Evokers depending on the composition. Access to Cyclone is effectively a stronger version of the Evoker's crowd control because it can't be dispelled. This can make Restoration Druids the preferred healer in heavy crowd-controlled compositions where they have the freedom to consistently land Cyclones. And so that covers all the main new meta builds moving further into this season. Make sure to watch out for any of the future hotfixes, as this could change some of the builds in this video, or it may lead to no changes at all, right? Depending on how big the hotfixes are. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time.